Good evening and welcome to the July 27, 2010 San Bruno City Council meeting and San Bruno Redevelopment Agency meeting. I'd like to thank the San Bruno Garden Club for providing our floral arrangement tonight. And roll call, please.
Council Board Member O'Connell.
Here.
Council Board Member Ibarra.
Here.
Council Board Member Salazar.
Here.
Vice Chair Medina.
Here.
Vice Mayor Medina.
I'm still here.
Mayor and Chair Ruane.
Here. Carol, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We do have some announcements this evening. The first one is the Beautification Task Force invites residents to nominate properties for the 2010 Annual Beautification Awards. Nomination forms are available at the City Clerk's office or on the city's website. Irene, do you want to say anything about that?
Nope, you did it all. Thank you.
All right. The second item is the regular City Council meeting of August 10th, 2010 is canceled. The only regular meeting in August will be held on August 24th, 2010. All city offices and non-emergency response operations will be closed for employee furlough on the second Friday of each even-numbered month, beginning on August 13th, 2010. And finally, the City of San Bruno and the San Bruno Sister City Committee will host a celebration commemorating the 20th anniversary of the Sister City relationship with Narita, Japan, on Wednesday, August 18th, 2010, at 4:30 p.m. at the San Bruno Senior Center. And the public is invited and encouraged to attend. Presentations this evening, we have none. Review of the agenda. Any changes, moving things around? I think not. Approval of the minutes of the regular City Council and San Bruno Redevelopment Agency meeting of July 13th, 2010. Any errors, omissions? Seeing none, they will be approved as submitted. Consent calendar, all items are considered routine or implement an earlier council action and may be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion unless requested by a council member, citizen, or staff. Any action?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve the consent calendar. All in favor?
Aye.
So carried. Item 8, public hearings. Notice that have been published, posted, and mailed. We have no public hearings this evening. Item 9, public comment on items not on the agenda. It is the council's policy to refer matters raised in this forum to staff for investigation and or action where appropriate. The Brown Act prohibits the council from discussing or acting upon any matter not agendized pursuant to state law. Would anyone in the public like to address the council on items not on the agenda? Seeing none, we'll go right to conduct of business. The first item is A, adopt a resolution in support of Proposition 22, the Local Taxpayer Public Safety and Transportation Protection Act of 2010. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. You saw this item several months ago in a previous action that the City Council took to support the initiative that was being circulated, being in the signature gathering process to qualify for the ballot under the leadership and guidance of the League of California Cities. As you see before you tonight, the initiative has qualified for the ballot and will be an important item on the November 2010 statewide ballot. This item essentially closes some loopholes in Proposition 1A, which was similarly spearheaded by the League of California Cities and partner agencies, to address the continuing critical issue of protection of local government revenues. In particular, as you know, the City of San Bruno, like many of our counterparts up and down the state, has been seriously impacted not only by the effects of the recessionary economy, but preceding that and continuing by the effects of the state's action to continue to look at local revenues as a source of funding for deficits at the state government level. As indicated, this ballot measure will take the additional steps that Proposition 1A in 2004, a very effective and important measure but yet did not fully address the issues. And this ballot measure is intended to further tighten up what the state can and can't do with regard to fundamentally local revenues. As the City Council is aware, we experienced a very serious situation over the past year that has knocked the legs out from under our redevelopment agency's ability to initiate critical, important projects in the near term by requiring us to provide just under $2 million of local redevelopment funds to the state to backfill the state's obligation to public schools. Again, Proposition 22 is an important item for the public's attention on the November ballot. We're asking you to join your colleagues up and down the state tonight in taking action by a resolution of support that we will subsequently transmit to the League of California Cities, and which I hope will be a demonstration not only of your concern about this city's individual budget issues, but the interests of the public on a larger scale and on a going forward basis to assure that the mission and the charge, which is that of local government, very local government, city and county government, is protected, and the revenue streams, however diminished they may be by economic circumstances, that those revenues are protected and that you have the ability to utilize them in the way that is at your discretion, the best interest of your local community. That's what this is all about, and I request your endorsement as a statement, not only for the residents of San Bruno, but for the voters throughout the state of California.
Thank you. Any questions of the city manager or action?
Through the chair, just before I introduce the resolution, just I state that residents always say that they pay their taxes and they want the services that they deserve and that they work hard for. And the thing is that they're not getting them all. We're not getting all the taxpayers' money. The state, through their structural deficit, and for all intents and purposes, there are problems. And then the county, but we don't have someone other than the residents and the city staff to take away from. So I think this is, if we got to do it every year with a ballot measure, we're going to have to do it just to keep our own money. So with that, I would like to introduce this resolution in support of Proposition 22.
Councilmember Ibarra.
Aye.
Councilmember Salazar.
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Medina.
Aye.
Mayor Ruane.
Aye. Item B, adopt a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute the railroad construction and maintenance agreement for the San Bruno Grade Separation Project between the Peninsula Corridor Joint Powers Board and the City of San Bruno. Staff, please.
Honorable Mayor, Council members, good evening. The action before you tonight is to authorize the city manager to sign a construction and maintenance agreement with JPB for the Grade Separation Project. This project is under development for the last decade, a major safety improvement that also part of the overall vision of the city in the transit corridor. In October of 2009,
Thank you.
thank you.
That's all right.
In October 2009, the council approved a MOU finalizing our policies and procedural framework for the development of this project. This construction and maintenance agreement further defines responsibilities between the city and JPB for after construction maintenance responsibilities and construction during and coordination during construction. I will highlight a few aspects of this agreement. You had attached to your package the full copy of the agreement, and I will, my intention is only just highlight a few aspects of this agreement. JPB will be and is responsible for the cost of construction. The city will provide only staff and technical support to represent the city's interest during design and during construction. The phasing of the project will depend on the high-speed rail. This phase will build the western two tracks, and the next phase, the eastern two tracks. JPB will consult the city for design changes if those will become necessary during construction. The turnaround time for these responses on the city's side is very short. The city will need to accommodate a 14 days response window. Recognizing the impact what this construction will have on the whole community and specifically on the eastern neighborhoods, will be a 24-hour contact number available to the public to comment, ask questions, to respond to make any recommendation with a commitment on JPB's part to have a response back in 1 business day. Also, as part of this public outreach process agreed between JPB and the city, will be an ongoing feedback process to the city indicating how those concerns were addressed. JPB will be sole responsible for the quality of the project, communicating with the public, and minimizing the construction impact as noise, vibration, and traffic during the construction. The city will have a general oversight role representing the city interest during construction, exactly how the city represented the city interest during the design phase. The contractor will have to comply with the city noise ordinance, and activities with the highest impact on residents, such as pile driving, will be performed only between 9 o'clock and 5 p.m. I will emphasize that this is a major construction project with a considerable impact on neighborhood and on the whole city. And the length of this construction will be 2 years. Is the expectation at this present time that the construction will start in October, and this phase of this project will be done in an estimated time of 2 years. After the construction is done, the city will maintain all of the city streets, lights, all of the landscape area, the Posey Park, the Sylvan Avenue, pedestrian and underpass, and JPB will be responsible for maintaining everything in their right of way if it's not called out specifically in the agreement. It is one remaining item not included in this agreement, the development of an archway was recommended and agreed by the CAC as part of the development of this project. On architectural element of this project envisioned as a critical feature to this project. It is a separate MOU under final development between us and JPB to memorialize our joint commitment to implement feasible alternative on the east side of this project with the next phase, or sooner if the next phase will be uncertain. I am here to answer any question what you might have. Also, Mark Simon and Rafael Bolon from JPB, they are here to answer any of your questions what you might have.
Any questions of staff at this time? I think we do have a couple of questions for you, Mark. First of all, I want to reassure the public that Councilmember Ibarra and I have met a number of times with JPB, and one of the main focuses of our discussions were the public outreach process. And we made it really clear that we need a line of communication for any complaints. This is going to be a disruptive project for 2 years. It's going to be digging and dirt and noise and everything. We've tried to fine-tune as best we could the hours of working, and if there are any complaints, we want them received within a 24-hour period or responded to within a 24-hour period. And you will have a couple of point people right there so that they're always available for city staff. And city staff has your numbers available 24 hours a day. So I just want to reassure the public that we really tried to make every effort that we could at this point in time, because this is sort of a moving target, to reassure them that we're trying to have their best interests in mind. Also, can you give us a little bit of it's hard. We have the high-speed rail, and high-speed rail says that this project is already in place. Tell us a little bit about some of this confusion and going forward, how we're to look at this project. 2-track, 4-track high-speed rail, where does it stand? Is it coming through? You don't know yet, but is it going to be 2 or 3 or 5 years after the fact? Where are we in that whole mix?
Well, of course, first of all, I want to confirm that your city staff does have my number in more ways than one. Of course, I can't speak for high-speed rail, and one of the difficulties, although Caltrain is in partnership with high-speed rail under the Peninsula Rail Program to advance projects to improve Caltrain and high-speed rail projects that have common utility, when it comes to their precise plans or the progress of their environmental review process, I'm not really in a position to speak for them. Having said that, the EIR calls for a time frame of 8 to 10 years for high-speed rail to make its final decision, obviously sooner than that, but to really be under construction, if not finalized by then. My sense is, from our conversations with the people at high-speed rail, that they have every intention of coming through San Bruno and adding the second set of tracks. Our position is, and this position is sometimes misrepresented, in fact, by residents of this very community, but our position is that Caltrain owns and operates the railroad in trust for the people we serve and the communities we serve. And any efforts by high-speed rail on the Caltrain right-of-way are going to be done in a way that enhances Caltrain and answers the concerns and desires of the communities that we serve. It's our expectation, there's no reason to think otherwise, that high-speed rail will be coming through San Bruno on a raised track of the kind we're building now. There are a whole bunch of engineering reasons why we can't do much else than that, but we think that we've, through the lengthy isn't really the right word, through the complicated and complex negotiations with the city staff, we think we've arrived at a project that is going to make something look good for the city of San Bruno. It's going to be effective for what Caltrain needs. It's going to be a significant safety enhancement, which is our first concern. I don't know if this is answering your question, but the fact is we can't predict what high-speed rail is going to do. That's one of the reasons that the agreements we have try to build into it what happens if high-speed rail doesn't come. I believe it's going to come. I believe it's going to come within the time frame described in their EIR, if not sooner, and we're building it with that in mind. We're building it with the expectation that it will have as its basis the ability for high-speed rail to expand an additional 2 tracks. And in fact, we're seeking federal funding for high-speed rail money to help pay for a portion of this project that has utility for high-speed rail.
Okay. City Manager, you got a question or comment?
If I wanted to elaborate on that just a little bit, Mark, and just make sure that we're all understanding the same thing. If you talk to high-speed rail people in their presentations, I know you're aware of this, identifies the San Bruno situation compared to others up and down this corridor as a grade-separated situation as the existing condition. So that is true. However, the grade separated structure may not be fully finished when high-speed rail comes. So how, can you tell us a little bit about the partnership between yourselves, the JPB, and the high-speed rail folks to bridge that gulf, that they're not understanding something different, that they understand there's work that needs to be done by them or is expected to be done by them as part of making sure that we have a fully finished, functional, and aesthetically pleasing grade separation?
I think a lot of what we're talking about has to do with the nature of the EIR and the alternatives analysis process that high-speed rail has to go through. They have to begin by not precluding any option. And then as they gather information for the basis of their decision, they begin to narrow those options. They've done one round of that, and that's the round I think we're referring to that indicates San Bruno would be an elevated, grade separated structure as a completed part of the project. I would, from what I understand from the conversations I've had with our own staff who are working part-time for us and part-time for high-speed rail, the next round of cuts on the alternatives analysis, which should be discussed at the August 5th meeting of the High-Speed Rail Authority, will further refine that. What it should show is what we expect, which is that San Bruno will be a 4-track, grade-separated railroad under the construction of high-speed rail and Caltrain in partnership as the Peninsula Rail Program. There's no reason to expect otherwise, but what I can tell you, and I can't emphasize this strongly enough, is that's the commitment we made. That's the design that we've approved, is one that is essentially expandable to 4 tracks for high-speed rail. That's our understanding as the owners and operators and holders in trust of this right-of-way. That's the commitment we make to you. So as this process unfolds, more information becomes available. Some of us want to jump ahead to the end and see how it's all going to turn out, or anticipate how it might not turn out so that we can build into it certainties that it won't turn out that way. But I think that part of the problem that we all face here on the peninsula, one of the frustrations is high-speed rail sort of has to walk through its process step by step, and it has to act as though it has no idea how it's going to turn out at the end. If they do that, the whole EIR can be effectively challenged and tossed out. So they have to act as though there's a constant sort of wall. This is all we can say right now up to this point, and we can lead ourselves to the next point. It's not hard to anticipate in many cases along the peninsula where they're going to end up. There are portions that we know can't be, where the right-of-way can't be expanded to accommodate 4 tracks. So they have to find an alternative to that. They can't skip ahead, even though we can. But the fact remains, we're building a two-track grade separation that has utility and is expandable to 4-track. It is our expectation that that's what's going to happen.
Any other questions of staff or of JPB representatives?
Let me just,
Stribera?
Mark, so for the viewers, for the public, 2-year project, what do you anticipate it's going to look like in 2 years?
It'll be beautiful. You'll be glad you did it.
You're being
it'll be-
recorded.
it'll be-
I should add, one of the things that was at the heart of this whole plan was that we would be finishing with this portion around the time high-speed rail was ready to begin its portion. We wanted to try and avoid having the city have a 2-year project, shut down for a year, and then go through the misery and unhappiness of another 2-year project. We were hoping to make this essentially one project. And we can say that it's the Peninsula Rail Program because it is a project that has utility and has meaning to both Caltrain and high-speed rail. So our hope is that it will be longer than 2 years because high-speed rail will have made these critical decisions, provided the funding, and we'll be moving along into the next phase as Clara referred to it. So it means more than perhaps 2 years. It means who knows how long it would take. I don't want to predict for high-speed rail how long it would take them to build their project. But the idea is that it would be one sort of project rather than, constantly coming back and making a misery out of San Bruno over an extended period of time.
Any other questions? I'll say one more thing, and I've said it before here at the council meeting, that the credibility of your process is really out in the public here now. And you've mentioned it too before, that this has to be a model for what you intend to do not just in San Bruno, but up and down the peninsula. So, you know, all the eyes of the peninsula are on you. And I know you have a lot of other people that probably don't work as easily with you as San Bruno has over the last number of years. I also want to take a moment to thank very much the Citizens Advisory Committee over the last 7 to 8 years, working very, very hard from a safety standpoint, which initiated this whole thing, to shovels in the ground pretty quick. So they've done one heck of a job and put an awful lot of time in, and they deserve compliments.
Thank you. If I could take a moment just to make a couple of observations, because this is, I think, an important moment to Caltrain and even a historic moment for San Bruno. I think based on the sense we get from your staff and from the subcommittee members that we've had the privilege of meeting with, I want to say first and foremost that the responsibility for this communication and outreach program is mine. And I want to say that publicly and make sure that everybody understands I accept that responsibility. And we're going to do our best, mindful of what's happened in this community before and some of the unhappiness that's been caused maybe by other agencies and by other projects. We want to use that as a model for how to do this right and what not to do. I do want to mention a couple of things. One is it was almost exactly a year ago that we met with the committee of this council and your staff to say that we had identified $30 million in state funding that was available we didn't think would be available. And we made what we described then as the unreasonable request to get this project designed and ready to go out to bid and ready to go out to contract in a year. We were right, it was unreasonable, not just for your staff, but for ours as well. But we did so, and it's a real achievement for everybody who's worked on this, Raphael and Clara most notably, that we've gotten to this point. It is a chance for us to expedite something that we know is an opportunity for the city to really reinvent itself in ways that I know many of you have wanted to for a long time. And we're very, very supportive of that. As I have said many times, largely to no or little effect, I grew up here. This town is very important to me. I can recall years ago working for a newspaper called the Enterprise Journal and writing a series of stories about how the North County always gets the short end of the stick in this county. And I know that's something that I felt when I grew up here in San Bruno. I love this town, but I felt as though everybody else seemed to go first. And San Bruno always seemed to have to be told to wait until it was their turn. Well, I can tell you, you're going first. This is $100 million of the taxpayers' money in San Mateo County we're going to spend on this great separation. This may be the last one we do because there's not that much more money in this great separation program. So I don't mean to say that you guys don't deserve it. I don't mean to say that we're unhappy to be doing it. We're proud of this project. We think ultimately you're going to be proud of it. But I'm just pleased to be able to stand here on an occasion such as this and say San Bruno gets to go first this time. So if you have questions now, if you have them later, everybody knows how to get in touch with me. We're going to be available a lot. And so thank you for the opportunity to talk to you and for making these few remarks.
Thank you very much. Irene?
Thank you.
I should have just kept my mouth.
You were hoping I would
want to
just
get that
skip
out
by.
first.
I read through this a couple of times, and every time I read it, I got more and more confused. And
Welcome to my world.
I think part of my confusion, and I'm hoping you can straighten me out, is that you have a scope of project, and it has main improvements, and then there's a list. And then there's another section that says optional improvements, and then there's another list. Some of them seem to exclude each other, and some of them seem to overlap. And for example, main improvements, let's see.
You mean like whether or not we're going to build a station?
Yeah, that part.
Yeah.
Because yeah.
Let me respond to that this way.
Well, let me
Okay.
just say this, and this is for the audience, the television audience as well. In the first part, it says a station will be built on parking, and then it says optional improvements at grade parking lot and a new transit center, and then it sounds through the rest of it as though this is going to happen, but this will only happen if we kind of all these other things happen. So it sounds almost as if high-speed rail doesn't come or if these other things don't happen, there won't be a station. I realize that's not how it's intended, but that's how it reads. So I'd like some clarification on that.
For the record, optional means whether we do it or whether high-speed rail does it, not whether or not it gets done.
Okay, that's not clear
Well,
to me.
okay, but I don't believe there's any equivocation in it, intentional or otherwise.
Okay,
Let me state categorically, we're going to build a station in San Bruno. We are, or high-speed rail is. If we build one and then high-speed rail comes, it's kind of pointless to tear it out. And it'd be a waste of a lot of money, especially, and then we'd have them build it, because the reason we needed a station now is for high-speed rail, so they get to pay for it. They get to build it. So it's all a function of not whether or not we're going to do it, but whether we're going to do it or whether high-speed rail is going to do it. And there are a number of items that fall into that category, but none of it is meant to imply or infer or even state in any way that we're not going to do these things. And the station's a great example.
okay.
I'm not quite sure what we'd have there in the way of picking people up if we didn't have the station.
Well, yes, I agree with you. The other confusion is if high-speed rail doesn't have to come or to start construction anywhere from 8 to 10 years, what's going to happen?
Well, 8 to 10 years is according to their EIR when they would be completing construction, not starting.
Okay, through the whole,
Right. What's going to happen? I can't tell you what's going to happen. What do I think's going to happen? Is worth about as much as the amount of money I spent on the Diet Dr. Pepper I bought before the meeting started, or less. What I can tell you is that we're working very closely with high-speed rail. We've already announced that there are 4 projects that would benefit Caltrain we think qualify for high-speed rail funding. So if we get the funding for that from the federal government, you could argue that those projects are the first construction projects for high-speed rail on our right-of-way, and one of them is the grade separation in San Bruno. The other 3 are work in the north terminal in San Francisco, work in the south terminal, and a signal system called positive train control, which is, we think, going to set a national standard for how to signal our trains to operate more safely. But it's all going to be a work in progress, and I recognize that to some degree there's going to be a level of uncertainty and even discomfort because of that. We have done the best we can to delineate these things as completely as we can, and your staff has done a very good job of probably making us do more than we were willing to do along those lines, but that's really the nature of it.
okay.
Clara?
I just would like to add a clarifying comment. The spirit of intent of this agreement, Councilmember O'Connor, is that if after the first phase is close to finalization, if the decision at that time will be that the high-speed rail, the next 2 tracks, will not be built in a reasonable time, and that reasonable time never was agreed to, what that really mean, 2 months, 3 months, 1 year, then the east side of this project will be entirely finished, including with landscape on First Avenue and everything else. Like, will be entirely the east side of the project will looks like the west side of the project and will be entirely finalized.
But only 2 tracks.
With only 2 tracks, but the east side face also will have the same improvement, will have the same treatment, will have the same landscape improvement on the east side versus how is improved the project on the west side.
I had 2 more.
Well, let me just add, we'll know more in October, we'll know more a year from October, we'll know more 2 years from October. And this is, I think we all regard this as a living document. It's not something that we're all going to say, a year from October, oh, that's it, we're done. We'll continue to work with the city. That's our interest.
Since I'm not a member of the subcommittee, I
Sure.
have to catch up on some of these things. I noticed on page 10 where it talks about public outreach, and I'm sure your intention is to also do some in bilingual
Yes.
outreach and Spanish and
Yes.
whatever needs to be done in that area.
Yeah, in fact,
Okay.
we've already done some research along those lines in conjunction with the, what's the project we're working on right now? I can't forget it. Thank you, the box culvert. in terms of how, we've already done outreach for that project. It's been multilingual. We actually did some research on which languages ought to be included. So, yeah, I mean, our intention is to do this well enough to satisfy you.
Great. And just one more thing. On page 12, it talks about city improvements, access to right-of-way, and it talks about you doing a pre-construction survey, and then so that afterwards you'll be able to bring everything back up to what it was. Some of the streets in that area aren't that great at the moment, and partly we've deferred maintenance on some of those because we knew the construction was coming through. So if you do the survey now and try to bring back the potholes, is there a way we could, bring it up to a standard or bring it up to something, or cooperate with the city and maybe, do something jointly, that you guys don't do something and then we come back and have to rip it up and do something else?
I think that's, if not the spirit of the agreement, then almost the language of the agreement. We require city sign-off on some of these matters before we can say we're completed with.
Oh, sorry. My mic was off, sorry.
Oh my
Okay.
God, thank God, I thought I was losing my hearing.
Those were my main concerns.
I think I can state without fear of being wrong, we're not going to put the potholes back.
Thank you very much.
We know we have to repave the streets. We're going to have to lower them a little bit. And part of our plan is to pave those streets over once we're done lowering. So they'll end up being repaved. It's not our interest. It's not here. We just don't want to do that, I guess I should say.
We've been burned before.
Well,
this is why
yeah, and I
we're very
understand that,
cautious.
and I recognize that we have to live up to those standards.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else? Vice Mayor?
Yeah, very quick. I think my colleagues have addressed most of the issues. I appreciate before the meeting taking some questions of emails that I've received. And I appreciate the residents who have keep their interest and keeping their eye on the project as well. I've gone down there as some initial work on part of First Avenue has been done, and talking to some of the folks and just seeing how it's been as far as the noise, as far as the construction. And before tonight's meeting, I went down there again just to walk along and try to visualize what this project can mean to this community. What monumental task it will be and an undertaking, new grounds that you're walking on, and hopefully a beautiful end result as you spoke of. I do have concerns for the safety of the youth during this construction and the project, and that adequate precautions are taken, notifications, signs, fencing, etc. I'd like to know that when it's all done, as far as graffiti-resistant paint or to the walls, the vegetation, it's maintained and it's kept up, so the appearance and the gateway to this community is what it's supposed to be like. You mentioned earlier that, as you know, living here before, is that it is perceived to be the short end of the stick. I learned that when I was at Cappuccino High School. It was always perceived that way, and I've heard it needless times since then. I think it is your ability, because it will be, as the mayor said, a model that the whole county and other communities will watch to see the cooperative effort that can or won't take place and what they have to look forward to potentially down the road. And I think you have the opportunity to help maybe change those views of many of our residents that feel we've gotten the short end. And this project has waited a long time, and a lot of people obviously have lost lives in the process, young people and others who are crossing at various locations. This could have a tremendous impact and positiveness to our community. And I'm hoping that you engage yourself and continue to meet and confer with the staff so that we are working as a team, that you are available, and that we address the needs and the concerns of the residents. Actions speak louder than words, and this project will obviously be your opportunity to lead by example and show us what you can do.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Anyone else? Action?
Good answer.
Well, I'll take the honors. It is historic, and Mark, thank you, and pass on our thanks to Mike Scanlon. It's been 8 years, and again, I'd like to also reiterate thanks to the representatives of our community, our citizens, what was that committee again? For 4 or 5 years, 3 years that we had them?
College of
About
Parkinson's.
17 residents, and just really outspoken people who went through and actually learned how to become engineers, railroad engineers, and got to really understand what the undertaking was. And our credibility is here to be able to give that project, to that committee and to the community as we envisioned it over those few years. And I can't think of anything that's more important, for this community. And it started with safety. It started with some deaths. And so we're going to take care of that, and plus we're going to improve the community. And with that, I'll be very honored and proud to introduce the resolution accepting this agreement.
Councilmember Ibera.
Aye.
Councilmember Salazar.
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Medina.
Aye.
Mayor Ruane.
Aye.
Congratulations, thank you.
Thank you very much. Item C, adopt a resolution approving policy for establishment of special parking restrictions on public streets. Staff report, please.
Thank you. Honorable Mayor, council members, the city experiencing an increased number of requests for special parking restrictions. Right now, the city assesses those requests on the case-by-case basis. The city manager expressed her desire at the beginning of last year to address the overall traffic-related framework, how to address those traffic issues, and expressed interest to have to develop a policy framework, how this request will be processed. This task was taken on by the TSPC and the department, supported by a consultant last year, in order to develop this proposed policy that you have in front of you tonight. The TSPC worked on this issue very hard, almost 6 months, between June of last year and until the end of last year. And the chair of our TSPC advisory committee is here, and certainly he will help us to answer any clarifying question that you will have, or to make any additional comment. The purpose of the development of this policy really was twofold. One is to provide businesses and the public with clear, predictable guidelines and process, and also in the same time to provide the organization with the same. Oh, looks very nice. I can read all of them.
I don't understand.
That's why I'm speaking. It's in my language. It's not.
That's a really complicated application.
But you see,
To learn a language. I've never seen that problem.
I can do my part. My part is easy. Martina's part will be very hard for you to follow, I can tell you.
the font.
Until I am speaking, maybe you can figure out with Marianne what really happened. If you can just close and to start over again. Okay. Maybe you tried another version here at the bottom. The policy, if you will support and approve them tonight, will be available on our website, pre-selecting many requests by simply informing the public on city policy, on city policies. If I will go back to my slide on purpose, also just to make sure that I made all of the point that overall, just to restate the purpose of this policy is to institute a consistent evaluation and decision-making process. Also, how I said, to establish an overall policy framework, to develop a clear standards and guidelines for public use, in the same time streamlining the process. I will let Tina Cheng, our assistant engineer, who has the responsibility of addressing traffic-related issues for the department, to take you through the specific of each policy. She joined us a few months ago and will be the one working directly implementing this policy. You cannot get rid of the... Okay, that's good. Maybe you can do it page by page. Okay, you got it. You have the floor.
As you can see, the most common type of parking restriction request that we have seen is first is the blue curb, the time limit parking, short-term parking, which comes in 3 categories: green curb, yellow curb, and white curbs. And the rest would be red curb, and then red curb specifically for adjacent to driveways. And no parking zone, and basically red curb for tall and large vehicles. The policy specifically for blue curb, and I'll highlight a few points. For the policy itself is when doing evaluation, there has to be proven there's no on-site ability, meaning there's no garage or driveways. And there has to be a proof of valid disabled placard or license plate, and that the requested blue curb should be in compliance with ADA requirement, whether if it's next to the on-street parking, there has to be accessible access path. For time-limited parking, and this one is specifically for commercial lane designation. This type of request typically requires parking survey to collect parking demand and occupancy data in order to evaluate potential impacts from either changing the time limit or to impose new time-limited parking. Specifically, an example would be downtown. It's a large area, and data and study and analysis will be required. And it should be noted that there are other city policies and city municipal codes need to be considered when evaluating this type of request. Next is the short-term parking. Similar to time-limited parking, this is for commercial land use designation only as well, and it has to be proof that there's no on-site abilities, and that there's a congested street and on-street parking condition. There are specifically, if the impacted area is large, parking survey and additional data for analysis will be required as well. For red curb, we will only consider requests that has to do with or relating to safety. Otherwise, the policy we propose is for arterial and collector street that have speed limit over 25 miles per hour, and there's safety sight distance deficiency, and there's a collision history pattern. And the next one is for driveway. Generally, we won't consider, meaning we won't accept the application for a red curb next to, adjacent to the driveway. But in different circumstances, if it has to do relating to safety, we can look into whether driveway could be modified in terms of enlarging. And there are other city codes that we need to look into to see if the modification is qualified or eligible for. Establishment for no parking for large vehicle. This item is currently being enforced by City Municipal Code, and we will not accept application for such because it's already enforced. With that, taking to the fiscal impact, we're recommending to implement an initial application fee of $247. During evaluation, if staff determines that the request benefit the community, the impacted community, then city could assume all the costs associating to the request, including staff time, establishment of the parking policy, the parking request, and the maintenance of the request. We could also reimburse the initial application fee. If the request only benefit the applicant, then the applicant is required to pay for all the associated fees. And the estimate and field study will be provided to the applicant before proceeding. So that takes us to the proposed policy. The process is breaking into 3 slides. I'm trying to truncate it, but there are 3 slides. The left-hand side here is represent the streamline process. The pink steps are the added steps to the current process for evaluating the special parking request. Together with the yellow steps, they are the proposed policy. And with this proposed policy, we're hoping to include different opportunity for the applicant to appeal at different evaluation stages. So here, if the staff initial decision is to reject the request, the applicant has the opportunity to decide whether to appeal or not appeal. If the applicant decided to appeal, then go back to the staff. We'll provide them with an estimate cost for the field study. Next will be field study. Here for the appeal applicant, if the second evaluation is change the initial or the preliminary decision, then we'll go back to the streamline, the left-hand side of the process. But if not, it's rejected. But at this point, the applicant has an opportunity to appeal to TSBC. If not, the process ends there. So at the TSBC meeting, if TSBC denied the process, here again, the applicant has another final opportunity to appeal to the City Council. If City Council denied the action or the request, the process ends there. Otherwise, we'll implement the request and everyone's happy. So we're introducing a resolution and asking the authority to implement the policy and to be able to reimburse the applicant with the application fees or to collect additional fees such as for the field study and for the implementation.
I have a question for you. On the blue zones for public information, are they applicant specific? In other words, if someone needs and warrants a handicap zone in front of their house, and then 2 years later they move, what happens to the blue zone?
With that, if it's approved, we're asking for an annual renewing fee. So annually they will come back, or we have a log of going back and check who hasn't come back and pay for the new renewal fee. If we could verify the applicant, if the need is no longer there, then we could remove the special parking restriction, whether it's blue, red, or white.
But it's annually?
It's annually. It's a way
So-
for us to track.
Okay, so if someone moves in the 13th month, what happens?
At that, we can we can evaluate the request on a case by case. If it's within, we can implement something, there's a deadline. If there's a waiting period for renewal, whether that the grace period could be 2 months, 3 months.
Clara?
I will try to clarify. There are many details which are not really worked out yet, and certainly after, as part of the implementation, many additional clarification need to be made. But it would be our assumption at this time, if somebody, let's say, you have to renew that on yearly basis, and they will decide to move from that property the 13th month, wasn't discussed any reimbursement. Probably they will be left with the second year payment of that fee.
Well, the fee is one thing. The removal of the handicap parking in a residential area, let's say, is another thing, so.
Was some discussion how to come up with a more complex, complicated process, how the city would know that blue zone is not needed anymore, but those would be too complex, and certainly our intent was to keep it simple as much as possible and not to add additional staff time. Our initial goal was to really minimize and to reduce one of the goal to minimize staff time, and adding too complexity to the process at this time wasn't at least recommended by us.
I think it's a fair statement. Somebody moved out and left a blue zone and the new owner didn't want it. It could be removed.
Certainly, the city manager make a very good comment that, of course, and if the new owner would not want to have a blue zone in front of the property, and they will notify the city, then of course the city would remove it immediately. But would be on somebody coming to us versus the city going out and checking them on an ongoing basis.
Okay.
At least that's the thinking at this time.
I know Councilmember Ibarra has some questions.
I'm not ready yet.
Okay.
Doing math.
I'm still doing calculations here.
Just for other people, what would be, let's just say somebody comes to the counter, they want a blue curb. Give me a ballpark of what that cost might be and the time frame that it would take to get through the process.
Okay, in terms of the time frame, if it's, when we're going back to the flow chart on the left-hand side, when it's a streamlined process, we're looking at 6 months to a year, depending how complex the request is. And the initial cost is $200, the total cost from beginning to end, assuming the applicant is to pay for all the associated costs, we're looking at approximately $2,900.
Okay. And I know this is, I think the director made references that this is just in its stage. If we're trying to tell a resident, you're going to be charged $247 to put your application for a request, what is the answer we're giving them? Why is it $247? Because there's an additional $221 per hour for staff time. You're telling me it's 6 months to a year potentially, and it's potentially, I think council member already figured it out before me asking, about $3,000. Just with all that data and that cost. And then I'm going to go to another point of, we're talking about the cost. Okay, so staff determines that it doesn't benefit the community, it's more for the particular homeowner or wherever. So what if the applicant disagrees with staff and believes it's more because believes it's something else, and it does benefit the community? Do they have an appeal process as well within that same system, or is that something different?
Yes, they would have the same appeal process available to them like for any other related item. The timing sounds very long, between 6 months and 1 year, but at least would be a set time, set expectation, how long will take. Historically, in our department, takes even now very long time to address these traffic-related items.
And there's also a renewal fee, I guess that's being charged annually? Is that what you said? And that's when the mayor had asked, and that's how we'll know that maybe there's still desire, and there is, you said, a renewal fee?
Correct.
And what is
Wasn't
that?
the renewal fee wasn't included yet in our master fee schedule, wasn't agreed on a specific renewal fee yet.
Okay, and the reason for the 247, how did we derive that, for everybody to understand? We derived that number for an application fee because?
Staff time for filing fee.
We were using the master fee schedule for application filing fee for $109 and another $108 for an hour of inspector's fee or rate.
That's
Or
all
do
my
I have
questions
that
for
number
now.
now?
Irene?
Thank you. Does the state regulate where a handicap parking space can be? I mean, it has to have so much slope and so much area, right?
That's why in the criteria or in the policy, we put in a criteria where the proposed or request blue curb has to meet with ADA compliant or have to be compliant with ADA requirements. Whether it has to be, it could mean a lot more than just painting a curb blue. It could be regrading the sidewalk or providing more sufficient accessible path. It's case by case.
Okay.
And it's happened, there are situations where it meets a requirement, but there are situations where it means a lot more.
No, I understand that. So if someone came to the counter and said, I want a handicap parking space in front of my house, would they be given, or would there be available to them a list of, if you want this, it has to have A, B, C, and D?
Yes.
Before they apply for anything, so that they're kind of aware that it's not just a matter of slapping blue paint on something?
Yes.
Okay.
I will also add that UC only does the policy, but actually each policy has a very extensive checklist developed in much more details. And those checklists which will support each of these policy will be available to the public, will be on our website, and they can go to see and basically to check themselves.
Oh, excellent. Okay. Okay, great. I just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Michael?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. Annually, about how many requests do we see for these sorts of modifications?
Based on the last year experience, there were 16 requests, of which 8 were processed until now, and there are 11, I am standing corrected, 11 were processed, and they were decision made at the TSPC committee level, but they were not recommended for any action to you, waiting for the approval of this policy.
Okay, so it's not a large volume of. And as far as the renewal process, that only applies to the colored curbs, not to time limit changes? Say you decided, it was approved that you would extend a certain parking spot from 1 hour to 2 hours. Would then that also be renewed, or is it only when we're painting a curb?
Our thinking was only just 2 curbs.
Okay. and where we deem it to be a safety issue and it's a red curb, then that would not require a
You are
renewal.
correct.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I've got two directions I want to go on this. First of all, I want to thank the TSPC for the work in addressing this. And I know over 15 years ago, I sat on the TSPC, and we pretty much dealt with maybe one item a month, if that. And I know it's gotten a lot more involved in recent years. My question with the city is what is city staff's commitment? What is our understanding of the commitment to this volunteer organization, this volunteer committee, and to the things that they come up with and the tasks that they feel are important in the community? Because it seems, where I'm going with this, is what it seems is that as things come in and this committee wants to take them on, we're almost feeling like it's taking away from other city duties from those departments, so that we need to at least be compensated for it. So that I'd like an explanation for. I don't need it right now. When I was on the TSPC, we didn't, just like you did for item F or E, generally not considered. We didn't even consider handicap parking in residential. In 6 years that I was on that committee, we had one persistent applicant, and we denied it. And I don't believe there's any in the residential area now. There might be. I don't know that for a fact. But there was always an explanation. There was always an option that had to be placed on the property owner to improve the situation, to make it easier for access. And the full understanding that this handicap parking space is not the exclusive right of that resident and that applicant. And we all know how many people have blue placards. I think there's been discussion in the past that we should have a downtown parking study, which would take up item B, as far as the time limited areas and everything. And I can understand, I can appreciate that if there's business owners or merchants that come in and that having issues with parking, unenforcement or something, that they're going to want to come and get it relieved, or get something relegated. So maybe we can take that on. Maybe that's a task of the TSPC to implement something where we look at all our timed parking, first in the downtown or throughout the transit corridor. Short-term parking, to me, is until we can get an enforcement policy, and nothing against police, but we're constantly hearing that, that someone's parking, especially on, in the industrial area, where there's loading zones, or there's white zones, or there's green zones, and they're parking there all day. So I think that $247 to do an application, that something in many cases, I would think that a majority of the cases can be just handled right there at the counter and says yes or no, or that's a good idea, whatever. We'll, let's put that to the committee, and as we get more of an overview of that area, we can look at it. I just don't think that a $3,000 application, is something that is going to attract, some of these, mainly business owners. They're going to want to pursue that. I think it would be our responsibility, to look at an overall parking scheme in a certain area and pursue that. It's our responsibility to do that.
If I may, I would like to comment about our commitment to the TSPC. It was and still will be to provide them with professional support and timely and objective information as much as our department is able, with available resources to provide to TSPC. Is our intent to implement in this process. And you have to realize this is a first implementation for us. This will be defined and redefined as all of us will face certain challenges with the implementation. It is our intent, exactly how you just said, to demonstrate that common sense flexibility at the counter, and to actually use these guidelines as the first selection process for everybody to understand that this is how the city will make the assessment and the judgment, and basically to have a very quick discussion with any applicant in the beginning of the process, and to try to render, based on very limited information at that time, a recommendation at that time, and to advise them that based on our policy, this probably will not really qualify, and to really will minimize the cost for any resident in the city. In the same time, yes, I see your concern about the high cost, so was discussed among ourselves. In the same time, if they really want to request more time investment and more information on the subject, is important for us not to have the others pay for the overall cost. That was one of the thinking, basically proposing this escalating type of cost, that everybody can see the policy will be no cost to anybody. They can make their own judgment. If they will come to the counter, the department will do our best to minimize their cost, rendering recommendation at that time to prevent any additional cost on their part.
I'm still trying to understand that there was a point where the decision had to be made that we have to be compensated with this, that there was a comment made or something where there was an understanding that we're taking on too many of these and that it's taking away from something else. And so I was expecting to hear a number when Councilman Salazar asked how many applications. I was thinking that you probably have 30 or 40, but to hear that you had 16 and that only 11 really were processed, it just doesn't, the perception is that it's not an overburden. And and to date, we're not charging for it. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't charge for it, but I'm just not seeing at what point it was necessary to implement something that, my last comment is that if I'm going to pay $3,000 for something that I really feel needs to be implemented, it better not take a year. It should take a lot, it should be a lot quicker, because we're talking 4 hours of this, 4 hours of this, and 4 hours of this, and that should not take a year. So I'm just saying that nothing I'm seeing here is attractive to the resident or the business owner that wants something like this.
And certainly this is a policy decision for you to make. I think it's important for us to show what is the real cost, to go through the process right now. Based on our best estimate at this time was our internal assessment that take us about a 4 to 4 hours to take any item to the TSPC, and that is a rough estimate based on limited information at this time. After whatever your pleasure will be tonight and what decision you are making, then if you are supporting the implementation of this approach, then the department really will set up a process to make sure that is minimized the invested resources in any case, and the cost will be adjusted accordingly. And hopefully I will be able to come back to you 1 year from now and to have a much more informed presentation saying that this many applications were processed, and that was exactly the cost in average for each of those applications.
Any other questions or comments? Yes.
Hi, I'm Stephen Marshall. I'm also here representing Jimmy and Irene Chu, who own Crest Cleaners on 705 Genevan. They actually requested a timed parking in front of their business on Genevan almost a year ago. And I just wanted some clarification that if you were to adopt this resolution, that any current requests would be exempt from these charges?
There's an explanation in there.
This issue was discussed in the TSPC. The TSPC's recommendation was to so-called grandfather in any request already filed with the department up to this point. Based on the existing financial situation of the city and acknowledging that this is a general fund cost, our recommendation was not to grandfather in anything not being acted on yet, the TSPC. But certainly this is your decision to make.
Could you clarify for me, how many do we have that are currently not being, how many would fall into that category that would then be charged that may have come forward in some manner? However you're defining that.
Based on our rough estimate, this would be an additional $25,000 to $30,000.
How many applicants?
How many applications? How many? 11 under or under review right now.
So 11 would be grandfathered in. Are there any that are not to that stage?
No, 5 will be. 5 will pay, and 11 will not pay. I'm correct.
11 has been reviewed, and total of 5 hasn't been. The process hasn't been gone yet.
They filled out an application for a request or no?
There's no application at this time. They call, whether they call in or fill out a request through TSBC, but it's on file.
Thank you.
Please state your name and your street.
Good evening, Mark Howard, Chairman of the Traffic Safety Committee. I came here tonight, sorry I showed up late, I was told this would be later in the evening. But part of the problem is there is no application, there is no process. It's all been muddled through and handled differently for each individual. And I think that the main thing that TSPC was trying to do was create a process to streamline this for the citizens. To make it easier when they come to the counter, for them to get a direct answer and some sort of continuity so that they weren't frustrated when they found out that their neighbor was maybe treated differently or another business was treated differently or they were given the appearance that they were treated differently. And by having an application and criteria that's standardized, the hope is that we can make it easier for citizens to determine whether they might meet the standard or if they need to appeal to get some sort of special consideration, whether that's done at the TSPC or if they disagree with the TSPC decision to come to you. Our hope is to cut down on the number of people coming here for special curb requests. And our hope is also to cut down on the number that we have to deal with because, one, there's a great burden on the city to do a thorough investigation to present their recommendation to the committee. And our hope is that by the time it gets to us, the people are really serious. It's my understanding people come in quite often to inquire about these, and by having this criteria, again, we hope that we can know that they're serious when they apply. The cost, I understand, is expensive, but for a business like a cleaners or some other business that needs a high turnover, it's a small investment, and really the application cost is less than what the city's investing in their research in order to present to the TSPC if it goes that far. The amount of money that we're asking for is really a percentage of what the city's investing. So when you're talking about several $1,000s to install and maintain some sort of special curbing or signage, and it's going to benefit primarily that business, we're asking the business to help to defray some of the cost. In instances where staff determines that it's for the greater benefit of the neighborhood or the community, there's an exemption in there that staff could waive the cost and reimburse them back everything, including their application fee. There are areas we know that we haven't had an opportunity to comprehensively look at the parking situations, and if a business comes in and feels that there's a need for some sort of special look at their neighborhood, we want to address it. But again, all these applications really back up the TSPC. 16 doesn't seem like a lot, but when you consider we only hear 2 or 3 items at a meeting, that could back us up for a year, and there's where you get the year delay. Hopefully, if we can cut down on the number of appeals or applications, it will give staff more time to deal with the ones that are the most serious, kind of triage it. Again, our hope was that when people come in, that they wouldn't have to pay the money, that they would see the criteria that's being set forth, and that they would see whether they meet the standard or not, and only apply if they feel that they have a good chance of success. And if they don't, maybe there's some other mitigation that we can do, or the city can do, to help accommodate them. That's all I have to say. Did you have any other questions? We went over this for months. We spent a lot of time with staff working on this, and just from walking in, it doesn't seem like it's being well received, and I understand if you have any apprehension, but maybe there's some confusion. If there's any questions I can answer.
If I could, we're not really clear, I'm not really clear how many, I mean, you say that there's constantly people coming in asking for requests for curb alterations. Make a policy statement, say we don't do that. And if you have that sort of request, then give them a pamphlet that says this is what you can undertake, to widen your driveway or your driveway apron. So, make a policy statement that it's been in this past that we don't do residential handicap parking. Make suggestions or give them some guidelines as to what they can do to improve the accessibility at their residence. And then if there is a number of requests from a certain neighborhood or businesses or whatever, that's where I was saying that maybe the TSPC should undertake that neighborhood or something instead of dealing with an individual request. That way then we involve the city and that we become, we take on that little neighborhood. But to take on every single request without, and not give them either a yes or no right there before they write a check for $247 or something. I mean, and I'm not down, I don't want to belittle staff's time that it takes, that people have to be paid for the time that they spend on it, and that it does take time to go out and take a look at something. And it could be more complicated than what you think. But if we narrow the scope of what the TSPC does and say, no, we don't do that. And if you have a problem with that, then come to the city council and object to it.
Well, I understand.
Yeah.
I think one of the things we're trying to do is keep those things from coming here, to keep you from having an agenda full of people that want things that should be really going before the TSPC and being dealt with. And this is just another form of triaging that, to try to get people to realize when they fill out the applications, they're answering the questions. By the time they get to the bottom and add it all up in their mind, they're seeing, well, I don't see where this thing is going to really fly, because when I answer these questions, I'm seeing that I really don't have the need or don't want to bear the expense of having it looked into. And part of it might be our fault, because when staff comes to us, we ask for a lot. I mean, if they don't bring us everything, we send them back, and that's part of the delays. But they go out and they knock on doors and they talk to neighbors and they do counts, and we ask for a lot from them because we want a comprehensive look. So when we tell the person no, or if we're going to ask you to pay for something, yes, we want to know we're making the right decision. So we just don't want just to shine, we really want an in-depth investigation, and that takes staff a lot of time. And again, that's something that all the citizens are paying for when it's benefiting maybe one individual or one individual business.
If I can say also that exactly the pamphlet what you are talking about, that's the intent of this policy, that will work as in essence, as a pamphlet, and everybody can use it and see it and make judgment on.
So the intent is to say, here's the information, read this, and if you really feel strongly, then come back with an application and a check for $247.
And
Correct.
if you really think you qualify based on these criteria, we want to be very clear and specific and make sure that you are only applying if you have either a very, very strong desire that you go through the process regardless, or that you have a reasonable chance of success based on the criteria that are outlined clearly in the material that you received right at the very beginning. And
I just think that if you do that, and if you open the door to handicap parking in the residential district, they're going to be at this meeting. And once the appeal process comes through, they're going to be at these meetings.
And I think you might want to draw some policy choices out of here. It is not necessary that we embark on blue curbs in residential areas. Staff is advising that that is an interest that has been expressed by residents of the community. If you don't want to do that, that's fine. You still have curb timed limit parking requests. You still have a variety of other things that this policy is intended to address.
The only thing I was going to say, and I appreciate that you're saying you don't want to, have to bog down as far as residents coming asking for things, but anybody's welcome here to speak under public comment on any matter that is of a concern of them in this community. And I know in the past, Mayor Franzel and Mayor Wayne would obviously direct them to the appropriate staff member or to the clerk, who then connects them with the appropriate department. So it does get, turned back to the TSPC. So I don't know that it doesn't just get on the agenda. So, the person comes, they speak, and then maybe they're directed because they're so frustrated, they want an opportunity to speak to us, and that opportunity is here always for them. So I don't want that to be eliminated or feel that they can't come forward to speak to their elected body.
I understand and I agree. I think the intent of the policy is to give a uniform process for people to follow step by step. And our hope is that businesses such as restaurants, maybe some high-end restaurants that might move into town, or current restaurants that might come to the point where they would need white curbing for valet parking and stuff, that those could be accommodated through this process quickly and easily, and they would be expedited and never even have to be heard by any body. And it certainly isn't my intent. I don't envision us approving a blue curb in a residential area, because it's something that, unless it were something very extraordinary, I don't see how we would approve that. But there are requests that come in for yellow zones primarily that do really impact one business, that they're asking for some sort of special curbing specifically for them. And I don't see a problem with them bearing the cost of that if it's going to benefit their business primarily at the expense of giving up parking for other residents. And as it is now, those take a long time. They can be backed up because, again, 16 of them can back us up a year. So I'm hoping that this process, if we can get it implemented, will cut that time down and also help the businesses and individuals that want special dispensation to offset the cost that the city's investing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
you to the Irene. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate what you said and the time and effort that the traffic and safety people put into this. It looks like 5 or 6 meetings, and I know you did a thorough job. I'm inclined to support this. I think it's a great idea to have a checklist that's clear, that everyone has the same checklist, that everyone knows what's going on and what's expected. I think having an application, I didn't realize we didn't have an application, so I think that's a great thing to have. It's been a policy of this council for years to pay for what you get. You use a lot of water, you pay for a lot of water. You use whatever it is you use, you pay for it. So I don't think it's unreasonable to ask a business to pay for the staff time that they are using to get a special, not special treatment, but for special consideration for a yellow zone or whatever it is. So I don't see anything wrong with what we're doing. It does sound like a lot of money, but in my experience, people, if you have to put your money where your mouth is, and if they really want something and they're convinced that they should have it, they should pay for it. So I think all those things come together. I think maybe what we could do is implement this the way it stands, but except I would like to discuss the blue curbing in the residential area and have you come back in a year and tell us, you guys review it in a year, we'll review it in a year and see if it's really working. As far as the blue curbs in the residential area, we have looked at it before in the past. San Bruno's hilly for the most part. A lot of the streets that are flat are narrow. I envision problems, just with fire, having problems getting through or whatever. And also the other piece of that is you could pay for having a handicap zone in front of your home. You may think you have the right to it, but anyone with a handicap placard would technically, if I'm not mistaken, have the right to park there. So I'm inclined to say, no, we can just make it a policy, no handicapped zones in residential areas, period. So that'll take care of anybody saying anything else.
Well, our hope is to work with people to help them resolve.
Speak.
Oh, yeah.
The public won't hear you.
On behalf of the committee and the staff also, our hope is to work with people and help them resolve it. A lot of times when people come with that concern, they were able to find other solutions where they can get permits to widen a driveway or add some sort of other accommodation to their property that will give them their own private parking place that's handicap accessible. Again, this process helps people with that because that's some of the stuff that's included in the packet to give to them when they come with those types of requests.
Thank you. We have another speaker. State your
Hi,
name
Tom
and street
Hamilton.
name. Thank you.
I'm a committee member on the TSPC. I've agreed with everything that's been said here, and just want to just kind of reiterate what we've been talking about in terms of trying to inform the public before they pay that $247 of what the likelihood is going to be. So if somebody comes to the counter and says, I want to put a blue zone in front of my house, the person at the counter is going to tell them, those all get denied. Just you need to know that up front before you pay any money. If you really, really want to go through this, the likelihood is very high that it's going to be denied. And here's the checklist as to why. If you still want to do it, well, now it's your money. So I mean, that's the kind of the general thing behind that. But the main reason I'm up here to talk is the grandfathering. Clara mentioned that the TSPC recommended recommended that we do grandfather all the current requests up to this point, so that people who came with requests, a year ago that still have not been acted upon aren't now slapped retroactively with a fee. We did not feel that was fair. I still don't feel that is fair, especially because a lot of the requests have been held pending the outcome of this vote. So they're already kind of being punished because we weren't ready to act on things. And I think slapping them with a retroactive fee is insult to injury. So I can't speak for the entire committee, but I know as a committee that's what we voted for the grandfathering. But I just wanted to bring that forth before you put your vote up.
Thank you.
Just one real quick thing. I know we talked about the business investing the $3,000, but there's a business, a dojo, that wanted to have a 2-hour time limit in lieu of 1 hour. So let's say he goes forward, puts out $3,000, but everybody around it benefits from it. So in essence, maybe that would be waived. I don't know. But again, it wouldn't really assist just that business, and the rest of the businesses aren't really participating in the overall charge that one business owner is getting, because everybody's going to be able to have usage. So, and I do appreciate the work, because I was the liaison when I saw you embark upon this task, and you've spent a lot of time on it. So, but that was just another thing as far as who benefits from it. Like the Blue Zone was a great example that you brought up.
All right. About 40 minutes ago, I thought this was kind of cumbersome and bureaucratic. But since we've had all of these explanations, I actually think that this will streamline the process. And I do agree with Councilwoman O'Connell about the blue zones in residential, but I have a feeling they will seek their own level. And I also agree that we should grandfather in the formal applications that have been received, not just the inquiries, but the actual people that have applied. I believe that's 11, if I'm not mistaken. But what's the pleasure of the council?
I would agree that we should include the remaining 5 in the grandfathering, but otherwise I think everything looks okay.
My last comment is I'm going to vote no if it doesn't involve a restructuring of the fees or anything, because I just don't believe that it's going to, I don't agree with the comment that someone that wants it has to pay for it. I mean, especially for nearly 100 years it's been free. So I think anything that we do on a public street is going to benefit the public, not just that one particular or specific business owner, and I just don't agree on charging them.
And just a point of information, is there any restriction, a business owner sees a need for his business to apply with another few business owners up and down the street?
I don't see any reason why they couldn't, but certainly they will need to meet the criteria of this policy.
Yeah, but I mean, if there's no reason why they can't pool together.
And I just, having the discussion on the blue curve, just one request came up at the last TSPC meeting, and based on this already draft policy was denied. The request was only in a residential area and was denied.
Okay, action by the council?
I'll introduce the resolution with the request that it comes back in a year for an update.
Could I ask for clarification about whether the council's intent is to include blue zones in residential areas as part of the program, or to eliminate those as an item of discussion at all?
I'll leave that as it stands. We can get a report back in a year and see what happens.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Aye.
Councilmember Ibarra.
No.
Councilmember Salazar.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Medina.
No.
Mayor Ruane.
Aye. Item D, adopt a resolution approving amendments to the City of San Bruno 2010-11 operating budget. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. At the last city council meeting, the council adopted the fiscal year 10-11 budget, and as part of your discussion related to budget approval, City Council made one specific request, and that was that staff further evaluate and provide a recommendation to the council at tonight's meeting on options for funding restoration of one of the many items that was proposed and is now approved for elimination in our current year's budget as a deficit reduction strategy. I won't go through in detail tonight the number of items that received attention and were eliminated in this budget, simply to summarize that they are in the amount of nearly $1 million in total and include just over 8.5 full-time positions, as well as reduction to a wide variety of line items affecting virtually every area of the city's service and every department. Specifically, the City Council asked that we evaluate options for restoring a portion of the part-time hours at the library that were proposed for elimination, and more specifically, that we evaluate that request in the context of assuring that the library would then not need to close on Fridays. As the City Council is aware, the budget currently proposes elimination of $70,000, or roughly 50% of the previous year's allocation to part-time hourly salaries for staff in the library. I would only mention for the council's information that the amount that's in the prior year, 9-10 budget, is already substantially reduced from years prior to that period of time. So there's been a successive, almost annual over the past several years, elimination of funding for part-time hours in the library. So at this point, we move to reduce the remaining amount by 50% as one of the many budget reduction strategies. By restoring approximately $22,000 of that $70,000 amount, staff can avoid, or the city can avoid, reduction in library hours where the library is open and available to the public. Currently, the library is open from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. on Friday and 10 p.m. to 9 p.m. on Monday through Thursday. The library is open from when to when on Saturday? 9 to 5? 10 to 5 on Saturday. The budget proposal is to eliminate 12 hours of operation. That includes opening an hour later and closing an hour earlier on Monday through Thursday as well, so for a total of 8 hours, and eliminating the 4 remaining hours of operation on Fridays. As I indicated, the City Council asks that we come back to you with options that would eliminate the need to close on Friday, that would essentially restore $22,000 of funding for part-time hourly staff. The report that you have in front of you tonight evaluates or gives you some perspective about a number of different options that staff considered. I'll focus on the recommendation, and that is that this amount could be funded via a restricted fund that the city has generated, has built up over the past many years. We receive on an annual basis approximately $60,000, or at least that's the current annual receipts, in 2 pots of money from the State Library Fund. In general terms, those funds are derived and are reimbursed to the city in recognition of services that the city provides through its library on a regional or statewide basis, in particular the interlibrary loan program, whereby an individual residing somewhere elsewhere, literally in the state, can request a book, and if that book or that material is available at the San Bruno Library and can be checked out there, that it would be essentially loaned to the individual's local library, and they're then checked out to that individual. So there is a real coordination and cooperation that occurs not just regionally through the Peninsula Library System, but on a statewide basis. A portion of the costs for participating in that type of program is reimbursed to the city through the interlibrary loan program. And those amounts have in prior years accrued to the development of a state library fund that is on deposit with the city. Those are city resources. They are generally restricted by council policy to library uses. And it was originally, I think, the City Council's intent that that fund would provide seed money for a new library. I think that the intent goes back a number of years. In fact, we have generated or had generated a relatively substantial balance in the $700,000 to $800,000 range. That fund has been drawn on in the recent past for limited improvements to maintain the serviceability of a now very aged library. And as the City Council is, I think, painfully aware, our efforts to identify funding for a new library have not yet been successful. And in fact, the opportunity to replace the library in total remains a situation that's is not in the foreseeable future. The amount that the city receives from the State Library Fund program in recent years, in the past approximate 4 years, has in fact not been deposited to that fund, but has been offsetting the general fund costs of operating the library. In the current year, we are using $115,000 from that fund, a portion of which will be received in new revenue this year, but a portion which is simply drawing down the balance of that fund. The proposal tonight is to take an additional $22,000 out of that fund to restore the operating hours on Friday via the additional contribution to part-time hourly staff salaries. I think, as my presentation has probably clarified, this is an option that remains viable for the City Council to consider for a limited period of time. I think library staff will continue to advocate for reservation of some of those funds to be available to provide the type of improvements that are now in process to make the mezzanine floor both more accessible as well as more inviting to library patrons, and therefore maintain and extend the service life of the library facility itself. Very briefly, other options that staff considered related specifically to the library, and one that I want to comment on in particular is, okay, so maybe you could just look at closing the library a different 4 hours, maintain the library open on Fridays, but maybe close an additional third hour of the day on Monday through Thursday, and thereby get to the same number of hours. In consultation with library staff, that was something that they felt very strongly was not immediately workable, in that you reach a critical point in staffing any operation, and in particular, I think we've reached that with the library, where it's not just a matter of you can cut back the hours and still stretch the rubber band as far as we would like to do that. That additional day really does present a need for the flexibility that the part-time staff availability provides, and that's the reason that we are recommending to you, number one, that it requires the additional funding if you want the library open on Friday, and that, again, my recommendation is that you use the library fund as opposed to going to other resources, trying to juggle around other funds, or as I know the council is would not have. I anticipated you wouldn't want me coming back and saying you could use the reserve, so I didn't do that. My recommendation that the alternatives that we explored are further outlined in the report. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions of the city manager?
Just to clarify, 22,000 does not reduce it, keeps the 8 hours. Keeps the 8 hours per week.
Correct.
No.
8 hours. There would be an addition. There would be a reduction of 8 hours per week instead of 12 hours per week.
Oh, so
It
you're still
only-
reducing.
Friday
You're
open.
still reducing the 4 days, Monday
Correct.
through Thursday,
Correct.
but keeping open all day, the 4 hours.
All it does
on
is
Friday.
allow the
Preserves
library
Friday.
to remain open on Fridays.
We still have a $50,000
Correct.
reduction.
Library would
Well,
still be
70,000 would restore everything.
correct.
Michael? Chair? If I remember correctly from the report, you did mention possibly reducing staff during portions of when the library is open, but that might have some negative impacts. And I was wondering if you could maybe elaborate on if, say, one less person was working on a shift, what the actual impact, I mean, is there any safety concerns, or would it be maybe just longer waits at the counter?
Yeah, I didn't actually address that in detail in the report, and I actually, if John, if you could come to the podium and maybe address this in a little more detail. My understanding is that we currently staff the library with a minimum of 4 persons. Honestly, what I would say, given the size and the utilization of the facility, the numbers of persons, and just from a safety perspective, cutting that, it gives me a great deal of concern. It's a very busy, very active library. Not only do we want to be able to, if you're going to open the doors, I think you need to be able to provide the service that people who come to a library expect. Qualified reference, professional, somebody that can assist you. It's not just a matter of people can come in and get books and check them out. There's really a great deal more to what goes on in a library. So I would say there's 2 things. One is to be able to provide at least a minimal level of regular service, and secondly, safety considerations.
And just to add, your question actually is very relevant. Your question already has been answered. We have already taken that into consideration. So regardless of whether the hours are there or not, we already have to reduce by 1 person hour on the desk, primarily between the hours of 2 and 5, which are typically busier. We usually had an additional person on. That already had to be taken off the table as well. So that's already in the mix in this conversation. So,
Okay. Thank you. Michael?
Just through the chair, I appreciate, yes, sure, I would not have supported it if it were reserves. I understand this doesn't solve the problem. It gets us through this budget cycle. We could still have the same situation come forward again. But this is I think the resource that has been identified is what it's supposed to be used for, is library and services. And I think this is a service that our community needs in these challenging times. And I would agree that I think if we're only having 4 at that point, that's very minimal staffing. Obviously, people do get ill, there are vacations and other issues that arise. And I think if we are going to open the doors, we have to have a full complement of staff that will be able to not only maintain the safety of the facility and the risk factors, but also be able to provide the service to the community.
Any more discussion or action?
Through the chair. First of all, I do appreciate all the effort it took to find the money. I know it's not easy, and to do the analysis to say where the staff should go and shouldn't go. I really hope that the public appreciates the enormity of what 4 people do in the library. There's 900 people in and out of that library all day long, every single day. The people who are there answer. I've stood there and watched. They answer questions. They herd children in and out. They help people at the computers. They find things for people. There is a self-checkout station that if you have your books, but it's like the self-checkout at the grocery store. I mean, you stand there and, every 3rd person, you need assistance. You've all done it. I've done it. It's not seamless as much as we would like it to be. If you stand there and look behind the desk and all those books that have to be reshelved and looked at and repaired every single day, $22,000 is a small price to pay to keep the library open for people who have no other resources. I realize they still take the furlough, but this is 44 days that people will now be able to use the library. So I'd love to introduce the resolution to approve of this and the rest of the budget.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Aye.
Councilmember Ibarra.
Yes.
Councilmember Salazar.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Medina.
Aye.
Mayor Ruane.
Aye. Item E, adopt a resolution approving amendment to professional services agreement with MIG in the amount of $175,000 for environmental review of the transit corridor specific plan. And I do understand that Mr. Salazar and Mr. Medina need to be recused from this item because of proximity to their residences. Irene will stay on because of a previous drawing of the straws.
they're gone now.
You're on.
Honorable Chair, members of the Redevelopment Agency. As you know, the city is preparing the San Bruno Transit Corridors Plan, which is a long-term plan that will guide future development along El Camino Real, San Bruno Avenue, and in the downtown area surrounding the future Caltrain station. The plan envisions transforming the transit corridors area into a mixed-use, transit-oriented development district. Preparation of the transit corridors plan is entering its final phase, with the preparation and review of the draft plan. In fact, the first draft plan was recently released for public review and is available to view by the public on the project website at www.planbruno.org. The Transit Corridors Plan Steering Committee met last week to review the first half of the plan, and the last steering committee is coming up on August 4th when the second half will be reviewed, and following that there will be a community workshop. An EIR is necessary because the Transit Corridors Plan proposes an increase in density and intensity of land uses within the plan area compared to the city's 2009 General Plan EIR. State law requires the analysis of environmental impacts that could result from implementation of a specific plan, such as noise, traffic, school enrollment, in accordance with the California Environmental Quality Act. Environmental review can take different forms depending on the scope of an individual project or plan. For specific plans, the appropriate level of analysis is a program level EIR. A program EIR represents a higher level of review which addresses development over a large area as envisioned in the Transit Corridors Plan. Whereas a project EIR focuses on the impacts of a single specific project. The purpose of preparing a program level EIR is not only to analyze the potential environmental impacts of implementing the plan, but also to simplify the environmental review required for future development projects in the transit corridors area, and to streamline the project approval process. If a future project is consistent with the program EIR, no additional environmental review would be required, saving time and expense for a developer. In essence, approval of the program EIR will expedite the implementation of the Transit Corridors Plan by creating certainty for developers. When economic conditions improve, development sites with environmental clearance already in place will be most attractive to developers looking for building sites. An example of a program EIR is the EIR that was prepared for the Navy site-specific plan, which laid the groundwork for development at the crossing. Thus, individual projects, such as the Meridian project, did not require any additional environmental review because the project was already covered under the Navy site-specific plan EIR. For projects that do not have environmental clearance, even a mitigated negative declaration, which is a lesser degree of environmental review than an environmental impact report, has a cost of about $70,000 to $80,000. So it can mean a significant savings for a developer. Why choose MIG? Staff recommends selection of MIG to prepare the EIR for several reasons. First, the plan and environmental review are really part of one large project. The specific plan can't be adopted without the environmental review, without accompanying environmental review. Two, MIG is highly qualified. The project manager would be John Wagstaff, who has 30 years of experience preparing EIRs, including many EIRs for specific plans. MIG is already familiar with the project and has a strong understanding of issues unique to San Bruno. And finally, MIG's cost proposal of $165,000 is lower than EIR preparation cost for similar projects that we investigated in other cities along the peninsula. There's another issue is a fee for reimbursement of cost to prepare the specific plan and the EIR. State law specifically allows establishing a fee on developers who derive benefit from the plan to reimburse the city. The cost would be spread over the entire transit corridors area and developers would benefit from the time and cost savings resulting from reduced environmental review requirements. This would involve amending the master fee schedule, and staff will provide a more thorough analysis of the fee, how it would be calculated at a future meeting. So that's really for your information at this time. The agency action tonight would approve an amendment to the existing MIG contract for an amount not to exceed $175,000, which includes a contingency amount of about $10,000. The approval of the contract amendment does not constitute an endorsement or approval of the plan itself, and the amount has been budgeted in the approved 2010-11 redevelopment operations budget. And that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions of Mark?
Through the chair. Thank you. Mark, if we approve the amount, that approves the contract that's before us?
Yes.
Okay. And there's a lot of exciting things in here, and I think it's going to be great. I just have one minute question. It talks about the roundabout analysis.
Yes.
I cannot figure out why you're doing San Bruno Avenue and Elm. I understand everything else, just not that one.
That, as we review the plan, those issues like that will be refined as we move forward. I mean, that in the next.
So that's just one of them.
Or eliminated.
Yeah, the next meeting of the steering committee is going to review the transportation section of the plan, and I think that we will sort of decide which roundabouts, if any, we'll want to investigate.
Okay, so this is more of a placeholder and kind of a what could be done.
That's right. We didn't want to leave anything out. That's everything that's in there now, in the plan right now, but there will be refinement as we move forward. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Ibero and I have had the pleasure of co-chairing this committee, and it's very exciting, and we have a great group of people to work with. And as Mark said online, you can review some of the proposals coming down the line in the next number of years whenever they happen to occur. But this is a big step this evening.
And with that, like you said, it's all just part of the big picture, and I'd like to introduce the resolution and let's get this EIR going.
Agency Member Ibera.
Aye.
Agency Member O'Connell.
Aye.
Chair Ruane.
Aye. Item number F, we can call the two council members back in.
We'll take care of the rest if you want. If you want to go home, we'll take care of the rest.
Our next item is item number F, adopt a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a contract with Mainstar, Inc. in the amount of $36,000 for the purchase of a geographic information system cross-reference software module.
Electronic.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and Council. I am presenting the Department's request for purchase of a GIS cross-reference software module. In 2007, the Council approved the Department's first ever computerized maintenance management system, CMMS. This system is designed to manage all divisional tasks such as operational work orders, informational files, and asset tracking storage systems. The CMMS system and all of its components is considered a best management practice and is a required tool of the state's sanitary sewer master plan. At that time, the department did not have computerized maps, asset storage files, GPS location positioning of city-owned structures such as manholes or water valves, or any computerized historical file system that tracks completed work and labor for future cost-benefit analysis and budget preparation. Since the beginning of the CMMS implementation, and working to meet state compliance, all of the before-mentioned processes have been created, stored within the CMMS system, and is being utilized by operational staff for better efficiency and planning of proactive maintenance. All existing data is now GIS compatible and ready to be linked with the computerized maintenance management system's separate GIS module. The purchase of this module is necessary to link assets on a map with their corresponding individual historical files. This ability is crucial to the targeted goal of operational efficiency in relation to assessing or changing maintenance routes, speed in accessing information, tracking problem spots, and is another industry-wide best management practice and a requirement of the state's sanitary sewer master plan. The city's current GIS system is a base version and does not have the enhanced features required to integrate with the department's CMMS system. This base version was implemented with a mindset of adding future layers or modules if they were truly needed. The department is therefore requesting the purchase of the CMMS GIS compatible module so that it can continue towards its goals of fully implementing the CMMS system and assuring compliance with state law, which is requesting that we have a GIS CMMS operational based system. In closing, why now? Ideally, sooner would have been better than later. The state is ramping up its compliance pressure. We're under pressure to redo our proactive maintenance planning. This is a tool that will help us do that. We're currently doing it in longhand, where basically there's always talk of a living document. This is a living system. We can video something today, and then it can change in its structure tomorrow. It can collapse. It can be a root can grow in and then become worse. So in order to do that, we have to do the long version and reassess and then re-manipulate our routes. This system was targeted to help us to do that. All other utilities that do what we do, at least in talking with the wastewater division, have this tool and is necessary so that when there is new buildings such as we're talking tonight about the grade separation, there will be new sewer mains on First Avenue. Without getting too technical, every time we make a computer layer, we have to go through a middleman, pay the middleman to make the new layer, and then install it. This way, if we have this tool, we will be able to not only redo our proactive maintenance routes, but we can cut out the middleman and we can do the adjustments ourselves. Another part of state compliance is having the ability to adjust your maps. Right now, we have to do it in the long version, pay consultants. Again, we can do it ourselves. And with that, I'll take any questions. That ends my presentation.
Any questions or action?
Through the chair. Are all the divisions in Public Works using the CMMS system?
All divisions will eventually use it. The wastewater division, we started the work order system. Again, we started off from scratch about 3 years ago, and we have a lot of information in just wastewater. We have probably about 6,000 assets. I would say that water probably has even more. They've been working very hard to get everything mapped. Everyone will eventually be using this. This was as part of the process of implementing it to go ahead with it where we could while we got the information in relation to assets. That information, as I said before, is now ready to be linked to the GIS module. So that is why we're asking for it now.
Okay, and I think I heard your answer was that your division is utilizing the system.
There are many components of the system, but
Right.
yes, we are using the most of it right now.
Now, the other divisions, the way I'm hearing your answer was that they're fully engaged in getting ready to utilize it, but are not utilizing it at this time. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So my only question would be is, with that only being utilized by one division in the department, why would we want to make sure everybody's on the same page utilizing the first system that we purchased and up to speed before we start introducing a second system that they're not even to the first step?
Well, for wastewater, due to the state mandates and orders given to other municipalities, this is law for us to have right now. What we have done in the wastewater division is set the path, and then the other divisions are coming within that same roadwork. What we do is obviously different from wastewater to streets, lighting, pavement, but there are things that have, projects that have gone on that we need to get into this system, and we need to be able to cross-reference and attach that documented files so that for queries, for budget preparation, saving time, we need to have that. When it comes to the other divisions, being that they're not using it yet, they will follow suit. It's just that in the sense of not being the sacrificial lamb, but we were the first ones to go ahead with it and hit the obstacles and then try to mitigate them and get around them, and for future other divisions to follow that path.
And you said the state has already, it was a law now that the state has imposed that this is a required device for purchase?
Yes, basically what they're saying is that is a best management practice. And what they're saying by that is that per our WDR or a CDO order, you need to follow best management practices.
I will add a few clarifying comment. How Dennis indicated all of the other functions in public services are following suit, and they are in different phase of implementation of this management system. Like in street, our street division is very advanced already, collecting all of the information necessary to set up and implement this system. Just to clarify with the requirement for just requiring by the regional board or other state entity, this is the best management practice. It's not a specific law, but is a recommended best management practice. I would also add that based on our discussion so far with this regional board and also our negotiation with other environmental entities, in order for us to get to a place where the expectation will be set for us to be, this is the most critical first step in order for us to make the investment and to be able to proceed with implementation of any other programs.
Okay, final question real quick. The system for all the divisions to be up as this division is, will that be a year from now? Will that be?
They will be at a different stage. They are proceeding slowly. They are investing like the street division. They are allocating each week 2 days that
So
they
about
are
a year
going out. 1 year, 2 year
Okay.
time frame.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Through the chair.
Michael?
Just really quickly, about the software itself, is Mainstar the only provider or the primary provider of this sort of system?
Mainstar is the company that we contracted with to have the CMMS system. It makes sense to have this provided through them, and we did at the time several years ago look for a possibility of having it through another company, but the prices at that time were far higher than Mainstar, and it made sense that since this is the company that we have, to make sure that there wasn't any interface problems or obstacles, that Mainstar, it was kept with them so that they can control it. And also as part of this, they have annual support, and so basically they will help us, and they have helped us and have been worked well with me in the sense of, hey, what about this, what about that? So it made sense to go with them through this.
Do they charge additional for the support contract, or is that included in the price of the software?
That is included in the price of this resolution. Any future annual support will be in the operational budget.
And in terms of maintenance, do they provide free upgrades on the software? Do they refresh that periodically?
I have been told that it is all transitional.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Any questions? Action?
I'll introduce the resolution.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Aye.
Councilmember Ibarra.
Aye.
Councilmember Salazar.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Medina.
Aye.
Mayor Ruane.
Aye. Item G, adopt a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a contract with PAX Water Technologies, Inc. in the amount of $218,000 for the purchase of 7 water tank mixers as part of the tank modifications and seismic retrofit program.
Take up that.
Honorable Mayor, City Council members, good evening. I'm here tonight on behalf of Public Services to request the purchase of 7 PAX water tank mixers for 7 of the city water storage tanks. The past couple of years, during warmer June through October months, we have an increase of disinfectant residual loss and high nitrate levels in our storage tanks. The only way to remove the high nitrate levels from the water in the tanks is to completely drain all the water out of the tanks, then pump new fresh water back into them. This method is wasteful and costly to the city. The acquisition of 7 active tank mixers will stop the nitrification and low disinfection problems that have happened through thermal stratification during the summer and late fall months. How does stratification happen? During the warmer times of the year, direct sunlight shines on a homogeneous tank during the turning the tank into a thermal stratified tank with the warmer water on top. This creates a barrier that prevents the disinfectant chemical from entering the top layer of the tank. This creates difficulty in taking a good quality sample from the top of the tank where sample site 1 is located. The longer the water sits in the tank, it allows for nitrification to occur. Cycling the tank up and down does not add disinfection residual to the upper layers of the tank. The end result is a poor water quality, and then the tank would have to be drained and new water introduced to the tank. Adding tank mixers can solve all nitrification problems. Adding the mixers will circulate the water, ensuring 24/7 accurate water quality sampling throughout the entire tank. No longer having to drain tanks will reduce the city's unaccounted water percentage. Several cities on the peninsula have installed PAX mixers with great results and great water quality with no nitrification problems whatsoever. For one instance, in 2006, Redwood City installed a PAX tank mixer in their Cambridge No. 2 tank, a 500,000 gallon tank. Before they installed the mixer, the top layer of the water in the tank had virtually no disinfectant residual and had high nitrate levels. Redwood City never had another water quality issue at the Cambridge No. 2 tank after the mixer was installed on July 19, 2006. My recommendation is to purchase these 7 PAX mixers for our city storage tanks. That's the end of my presentation.
Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, real quick, I'll make it quick. The need for us to change it right now is just because of the waste of the water. And I know it said it was going to save costs. Is there a guesstimate of how much that will save by?
Yeah, it's, last year was a real bad year. We had a tank project, so we had to hold water in tanks, and it escalated. Last year we dumped 15 million gallons at a cost of $65,000. It's about a 5-year buyback.
Thank you.
Any other questions or action?
I'll introduce the resolution. I guess it is.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Aye.
Councilmember Ibarra.
Aye.
Councilmember Salazar.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Medina.
Aye.
Mayor Ruane.
Item H, receive a report and approve response to the San Mateo County Grand Jury Report on the effectiveness of red light traffic camera enforcement. Chief.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. Last year, the San Mateo Civil Grand Jury requested information from those cities in San Mateo County that use or were considering the use of photo enforcement for red light violations. The grand jury was provided with information regarding San Bruno at that time, and at that time we were evaluating photo enforcement equipment. The grand jury examined the effect that photo enforcement had on reducing collisions, the costs associated with the equipment rental, the fines received from violations, and the impact photo enforcement has had on the courts. On June 7th of this year, the grand jury released their report on the effectiveness of red light traffic camera enforcement. To briefly summarize, the grand jury reported that photo enforcement should be used where accidents could be reduced, and that further evaluation should be based on accident reduction and not revenue generation. Excuse me. The grand jury also recommended uniformity amongst the county in photo enforcement operations and processing. The report identified that while photo technology is an effective enforcement method, violations have also increased the workload on the courts. The grand jury has asked each governing body to comment on the findings and recommendations made at the report and to approve the response at a public meeting. The draft response before you tonight informs the grand jury that San Bruno considered red light cameras, and while photo enforcement is a useful tool in providing traffic safety, we found that it was not a cost-effective method. The response does agree with the grand jury conclusion that traffic safety should be the motive behind photo enforcement, and that reducing collisions is one means of measuring the effectiveness of photo enforcement. The response also points out that each violation has the potential to cause an accident, and this factor must also be considered when evaluating the effectiveness of red light camera enforcement. The response also includes that traffic volume, the number of lanes in the intersection, and the ability for the officers to safely enforce those violations should also be considered. The response also points out that a portion of the red light fines goes to the county, and this could be used to offset the costs to the current burden on the courts. Over time, the feeling is that red light violations will drop and diminish as the public becomes aware of photo enforcement, and that the temporary increase and the temporary burden on the courts will also gradually reduce. Finally, the response indicates that the City of San Bruno remains committed to providing traffic safety. The recommendation tonight is that you approve the response to the grand jury, and that concludes my presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions of the chief or action?
If there's no questions, I'll go ahead and I move we approve the response to the San Mateo County Grand Jury.
The motion, is there a second?
Second.
Motion second on the floor. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So carried.
Good letter.
Item I, authorize the mayor to respond to the civil grand jury report on city fire department consolidations and mergers.
So moved.
Sure.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council members. On May 26, 2010, the presiding judge of the Superior Court sent a letter to the City of San Bruno requesting a formal response to the civil grand jury's report on city fire departments, consolidations, mergers. Under state law, the city has 90 days to respond to this request. The civil grand jury's report focused on the existing fire service consolidations in the county, including Belmont San Carlos Fire, North County Fire Authority, Central County Fire, and Coastside Fire Protection District. It was also noted that the process of fire department consolidation has become simplified due to the San Mateo County boundary drop provisions in the Advanced Life Support JPA agreement. The report identifies successful consolidations have resulted in significant cost savings, and cities are having a difficult time sustaining current service levels given the current economy. The report also states that San Bruno could significantly reduce the cost of service to taxpayers by aggressively pursuing consolidation. The response, to be signed by the mayor, includes the fact that San Bruno has entered into at least 3 merger discussions with neighboring agencies in the past. For one reason or another, these mergers did not come to fruition. The civil grand jury's report, although recommending these mergers, does not consider the issues such as governance models, payroll, insurance, labor parity, or station closures that could create complexities of consolidations. Currently, the City of San Bruno and Millbrae share fire chief and battalion chief services that provide cost savings and efficiencies to each of the agencies. We share a training division with 4 agencies to address our emergency medical and operational training. We are currently in the process of completing a comprehensive analysis of alternatives for expanded shared services and potential consolidation with 3 other fire engines. The City of San Bruno generally agrees with the findings outlined in the grand jury report, but provides additional comments on 2 of the findings. Finding number 6, which states consolidations were driven by the need to significantly reduce cost while maintaining the same level of service. While this may be a consideration, we believe there may be opportunities in the long term to improve services with a more efficient delivery system. Finding number 12 was consolidation of the Belmont San Carlos Fire Department, North County Fire Authority, and Central County Fire Department by agreement of the City Council, City Management, Fire Department Management, and Firefighters Union. We noted that similar agreements, such as the San Bruno-Millbrae Agreement, have also resulted in successful coordination of shared service delivery. In summary, although we agree with most of the findings and recommendations of the grand jury's report, there are complex issues that need to be addressed, and it may not be a one-size-fits-all model. We do agree with the recommendation that there should be a dispute resolution process. The response also recognizes the need to continue our interest for a sustainable and cost-effective delivery of fire services in this community. With that concludes my report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions or comments? You're going to let me respond.
If not, I'd be more than happy to authorize. I move to authorize the mayor to respond to the civil grand jury report.
I'll second.
Motion second on the floor. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried.
Good letter.
J, authorize the city manager to negotiate an agreement with Seagrave Apparatus LLC for the purchase of replacement fire apparatus in the amount not to exceed $574,000.
Mayor, members of the City Council, the Fire Department is recommending the replacement of the 1988 Pierce fire engine after 22 years of service. This vehicle is currently used as a reserve piece of apparatus with over 120,000 miles on it currently. This engine is put into service when the first line engine is out of service for any reason, such as repairs or servicing. Some of the problems we are having with this apparatus is obtaining parts, as the vendor has discontinued stocking parts for vehicles this old. Also, this engine does not meet the National Fire Protection Association standards for fire apparatus, as it is not an enclosed cab, opening up liability issues should it be in an accident. And finally, the fire pump did not pass the pump test in 2009, meaning it may not provide adequate water capacity during an emergency. The cost of the new fire apparatus has increased significantly over the past 5 years. There's due to a number of factors, the main being the 2007 Environmental Protection Agency's diesel emission standards that required adjustments and re-engineering of standard chassis models. There were increased costs in raw materials, including steel, copper, wiring, motors, transmission, and fire pumps. The NFPA Standard 1901 standard for automotive fire apparatus also had an effect on the pricing, as it added mandatory roll stability controls, seat belt monitoring, emergency lighting requirements, and vehicle monitoring system as recommended requirements. The fire department was able to use an add-on or piggyback bid by the Portland, Maine Fire Department. Bids were solicited from 5 vendors, including Seagrave, Rosenbauer, Smeal, Pierce, and E1. These bids range from $348,300 to $497,739. All of these bid prices only included the chassis and motor. All of the bids were closely evaluated, and it was determined only 2 of the vendors were able to meet our specifications for a stainless steel cab and skin. These vendors were Seagrave and E1. The fire department is recommending the purchase of the Seagrave Marauder. This apparatus is being recommended because it was the lower of the 2 bids, and this met our stainless steel cab requirements. This has been a lesson learned on previous apparatus, as fractures, as steel and aluminum body construction typically is stressed and has fractures in the chassis and frame components. The department also feels the Seagrave has built a reputation for providing durable, long-lasting, and dependable apparatus, as well as providing excellent and timely service when required. This vehicle meets all NFPA standards for safety, lighting, rollover, and cabin closures. The base bid for the apparatus was $491,099. Sam Bruno has added an additional $43,857 worth of accessories in the bid price. This includes such things as communication system, LED traffic lighting for traffic safety, piston intake valves, and an 8-hour instruction class for all our mechanics. One of the conditions of the proposed bid is that we secure a 2007 diesel motor as the engine, as the price for the next generation EPA compliant motor would cost estimated at $60,000 more. Staff was being advised by the Seagrave representative that these diesel motors were in very short supply as of last Tuesday, as there were only 3 left at the Seagrave plant. The Western Regional Director did make contact with us and has agreed to purchase one of the 2007 remaining engines. The equipment reserve fund for this particular piece of apparatus is at $342,318, which obviously does not cover the full replacement cost. After discussions with our finance department, it would be our recommendation to purchase the vehicle through a lease purchase agreement, as we do get a discount through this type of option. Our proposal would be to return to the City Council once the finance details are finalized, hopefully by next month. Staff would request that the City Council authorize the City Manager to send a letter to Seagrave indicating our intent to go forward with the purchase, and then negotiate and execute a contractual agreement, including apparatus specifications, performance bonds, and delivery timelines. At the same time, the Finance Department can continue to research the best financing alternative for the city. It's staff's recommendation that we turn to the City Council with the agreement and financial report at the next scheduled City Council meeting. Finally, I'd like to thank the Apparatus Committee for all the work and effort they put into this. This has been a work in progress for over 2 years, and I know we'll be getting an apparatus that will serve the community for a long time. That concludes my report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Chief, what's the difference in cost between stainless steel and, say, aluminum?
It's about $80,000.
And what is the current structure of the engine we're replacing?
It is an aluminum steel construction.
But you've had a lot of maintenance over the years, or just
Yes.
recently, or?
Yes, exactly correct.
Okay.
Chair, just a quick question. I assume then this new vehicle will be replacing one of your primary ones, and then one of those will become the reserve engine.
Correct.
And I'm wondering, the one that's going to be that's going to be tagged the reserve engine, what condition is that, and how many miles, how old?
The purchase of this engine will put us in a good position with reliable reserve pieces of apparatus. The next due engine is due for replacement in 2014. Again, we have been using 25-year replacement cycles, and in my opinion, that's way too long in the way we use apparatus today. Those replacement schedules were typically done when we're running medicals and squads and so forth and so on. Currently, we're running engines on everything we do. The engines are moving. So,
thank you. Nothing else for like a motion, Mr. Mayor? Not a motion. I move to authorize the city manager to negotiate an agreement for a new fire apparatus replacement.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion second. Question? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Great. Report of commissions, boards, and committees. There are none. Comments from council members?
Through the chair. Very quickly, I brought this up at the budget study session, and obviously that is now behind us. And I think with the goals that we're trying to achieve down with the grade separation and to our gateway to our community, I would like to see us as a council try to put on a goal as what we can do at Huntington and San Bruno Avenue with the bank facility that has been vacant for far too long. And I believe, like to see what kind of opportunities and options are before us that we can do to help that along.
Thank you. Any comments? I have one thing. I brought up during budget discussions at City Hall, the queries I get from a lot of people wanting to know how they can possibly help us in this budget struggle here. So I had mentioned at that time about an Adopt a Park program, neighborhood parks, not city park, not the big one, but some of the smaller parks in our neighborhoods, and how people might be able to help assist us, being that we're losing some staff and some of that maintenance facility. So I would like to ask the city manager to give it to the director and see what we might be able to do. The other thing I have is I received, as the council did, a number of letters regarding alleged speeding on Susan Drive. I understand that the city has done some investigation on that particular situation, and I'd like to get a report at the next council meeting on what the results of those studies were. So that's all I have. We will be going into closed session. City Manager and Human Resources Director request a closed session pursuant to California Government Code Section 54957.6 regarding direction for labor negotiations with the public safety, bid management, police, and fire bargaining units. And in closing tonight, before we adjourn, I would like to close this meeting in memory of, have a moment of silence in memory of Joseph Galligan. Joe Galligan was the city attorney for San Bruno for 23 years, from 1957 to 1980. Could we please have a moment of silence? Thank you. This meeting will adjourn to the next council meeting to be held on August 24th, right here at the Senior Center.